Hey everyone, welcome to our special Twinleaf guide to the Seed of Sacrifice Extreme. I'm going to go over all of the mechanics that we've seen so far to hopefully remind everyone of what we learned before and get us on the same page to make some good progress at our next raid. The first mechanic of the fight is called Terror Unleashed. This will reduce all players to 1 HP. They must be healed all the way to full before the debuff expires in order to avoid an instant death. Next up is Solemn Confiteor. This will spawn AoE circles under all players. In order to handle this, we stacked close together to bait the puddles all in one spot to make it easier to dodge and handle the next mechanic. The next mechanic is Absolute Stone 3. This is a conal attack against all players. We need to spread out into our assigned clock positions in order to avoid any form of overlap. Then, the boss will cast Limit Break. This is Limit Break 3, which is Meteor. This will target all 4 DPS with a Meteor, which deals high proximity-based damage. In order to avoid any form of overlap, all 4 DPS will go to their assigned corner of the arena, along with a healer or tank partner. Soon after, the boss will begin casting Imbued Saber. He will cast this ability twice, followed by Imbued Coruscants. Each cast of Imbued Saber will imbue a particular elemental effect onto his sword, and both of these effects, along with another AoE ground attack, will trigger when Imbued Coruscants completes. The first of the 2 Imbued Saber casts will either apply Stone or Light. Stone will cause a conal attack targeted towards each player, identical to Absolute Stone 3, which we've already seen. In order to handle this, we stay at our clock positions. Light, on the other hand, will apply an invisible stack-up marker on a random player. To ensure that we share this damage correctly, we all stack up on the north side of the boss. The second Imbued Saber cast will either apply Fire or Ice. If the element is Fire, then a debuff will be applied once Imbued Coruscants goes off that will cause high damage upon moving or attacking in any way. This debuff lasts for about 2 seconds, during which time you should pretty much take your hands off of your keyboard. Ice, however, applies a freeze and heavy damage if you are not moving when the attack is triggered. We found that jumping is an effective way to make sure that you are count as moving at the moment that the attack finishes, and ensure that you do not get frozen. Finally, the boss will cast Imbued Coruscants, which has one of 2 possible animations. If he raises his sword and you can see rings forming around it, then that will be a donut attack, and you must stand inside the boss's hitbox to survive. If instead he raises his sword and there are no rings around it, it will be a point-blank AoE attack, and you must step away from the boss in order to avoid damage. The boss will then cast Sword of Light. This will cause 3 blades to spawn around the edge of the arena, which will travel in a triangle pattern. This will leave a small safe zone on one edge of the arena, which we all need to stack in to share damage from a stack-up marker. We handled this mechanic pretty well before, but just in case anyone wasn't quite clear on what was happening, I've drawn up a little diagram so that we can take a closer look at how it actually functions. Each of the 3 Swords of Light in this geometry lesson mini-phase will travel in a triangle pattern, covering one edge of the arena and coming to a point in the opposite edge. Once they complete this entire track, they will spawn a deadly AoE attack covering the entire interior of the triangle. Each of the 3 Swords of Light may spawn either on a corner or in the middle of an edge of the platform. The important thing to try to determine once the Swords of Light start moving is which edge they are going to travel along. This is because, since there are 3 Swords of Light, there's only one safe edge which is not covered by them. Players need to identify which edge is going to be safe, and then move into the same area of that edge in order to share damage from an incoming AoE stack marker. Once our geometry lesson is complete, the boss will begin casting Limit Break 2, which is Desperado. This is a shareable line attack in quick succession against each healer. In order to handle this, we split it into 2 separate groups, with 1 healer per group on opposite sides of the boss. Next up, the boss will begin casting another Imbued Saber and Imbued Coruscant's combo. This works exactly the same as the first time, except that it will use the opposite elements from the first cast. Next up is Limit Break 1, which is Braver. This will target one random healer, one random tank, and one random DPS with a large conal attack. In order to avoid overlap, we split into 3 groups. Tanks go to A, healers go to B, and DPS go to C. Once this completes, the boss will begin casting the Bitter End Tank Buster. This will apply vulnerability up debuff, and therefore a tank swap is required during the cast. Next, the boss will cast Summoned Worm, which marks the beginning of a small mini-phase. AoE circles will spawn under everyone's feet, one player will be marked with a gaze attack marker, and a dragon will spawn and cause either the east or west side of the arena to be covered in a deadly AoE attack. Because we had some issues handling this last time, I've drawn up a diagram so we can dive in and develop a slightly more consistent strat for handling this mechanic. The Summon Worm mini-phase is immediately preceded by the Bitter End Tank Buster. This Tank Buster applies a vulnerability up debuff to the main tank, meaning that we need to tank swap during the cast. Just after this Tank Buster ends, the boss will begin casting Summon Worm. At this time, all players should stack up tight near the edge of the boss's hitbox in order to bait incoming AoE circles. Once the Summon Worm cast completes, a dragon will spawn on the north edge of the arena, covering either the left or right edge of the platform, either west or east. The boss will also begin casting Absolute Flash. AoE circles will appear under the feet of all players, and one player will be marked with the gaze attack icon. Players should dodge the AoE circles to the south in order to have room to maneuver to dodge the worm attacks. The player with the gaze attack marker should move to the south edge of the platform, while all players identify whether the worm will be attacking the east or west side, and they should move into the safe zone. At this point, all melee can move into range of the boss to continue attacking and make sure that we have a good amount of DPS uptime. Finally, the worm will cover half of the platform with a deadly AoE attack, but hopefully we will have all avoided it by then. At the end of this mini-phase, the boss will cast Dragon Dive, which is an unavoidable raid-wide AoE attack. Next up, the boss will start his add phase. He will go untargetable and spawn a Spectral Warrior and Spectral Dark Knight add, which must be destroyed. He will also spawn a number of untargetable adds, which will cause a variety of mechanics in quick succession. Each DPS will be marked with a flare marker, each healer will be marked with a stack-up marker, 2 meteor circles will spawn in the center of the room, which must be soaked, and 4 dragons will spawn in the corners of the room, tethered to random players, and deal a large AoE conal attack after a short time. In order to explain how we handle all of these mechanics, I have, as you may have guessed, drawn up a small diagram. At the start of the add phase, a Spectral Warrior and Spectral Dark Knight will spawn near the center of the arena. These adds must be immediately pulled to the outside edge in order to prevent them from tethering together and gaining a buff. Soon after, all 4 DPS will be marked with proximity AoE markers, which they must pull to the outside corners of the arena in order to avoid overlapping damage. As soon as these markers resolve, each healer will be marked with a stack-up marker, 2 meteor puddles will spawn in the center of the arena, and 4 dragons will spawn at each corner. Because this stack-up marker causes a fire vulnerability up debuff, the 4 DPS must travel to the center of the arena to soak the meteors, while each healer must stack with their respective tank. Once the meteor puddles have been soaked, each dragon will tether to a random player, and each add will begin casting an interruptible ability, which will enrage them if it completes. Because the meteor puddles cause a longer lasting fire vulnerability up debuff, each healer and tank must take one of the tethers and face it towards the outside edge of the arena. DPS at this point are free to simply attack the boss. The tether attacks will cause a large conal attack towards each player. Once this resolves, the core mechanics of the add phase have completed, and it becomes a DPS race to kill both adds before the boss's limit break gauge reaches 100%. Beware that tank busters continue to occur, so tanks be ready with mitigation, and healers keep your tanks topped up. And that marks the end of everything that I have caught on video. We also did see the boss at the end of the add phase past Limit Break 4, which we expect will require a tank limit break in order to survive. However, that's really the end of everything that we know about the fight so far. Hopefully this review has been helpful, and we're going to be able to brave a brand new world of the rest of the fight the next time we raid. It's been really fun to put this together, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see y'all on Saturday.